Tariq Al-Rasheed stood on the balcony. The night wind of Dubai whispered through his fingers. He slid the glass door shut behind him. Inside was his mistress, Anya, 18 years old, fast asleep. The phone vibrated in his hand. The first call was from the bank. Gold had just hit $5,500. His short position had no collateral left. They did not ask. They informed. $600,000, gone in a single night. The second call came immediately after. Layla, his wife, at home in Ahmedabad. Her voice was not the voice of someone crying. It was the voice of someone who had finished crying long before this moment. She already knew about Anya. She said she would sell the penthouse. He only looked through the glass into the darkness of the room. The bank was waiting. His wife was waiting. Anya was still asleep. Dubai below was still lit up like the middle of the day. Tariq Al-Rasheed was head of the gold derivatives trading desk at Kotak Mahindra Bank, Ahmedabad branch. 6 consecutive years without a single losing year. His office was on the top floor of the branch building. The view looked straight out over the central financial district. On his desk were 6 screens running continuous data, green and red. That was the first thing he looked at every morning before he looked at anything else. 3 times in 6 years, he predicted the largest market movements with precision. Every time the market panicked, Kotak Mahindra Bank recorded a profit. Clients deposited money without asking many questions. The bank trusted him with more capital than any other trader in the branch. That was enough, by any reasonable measure. When the proposal to raise the leverage ceiling to 20 times was approved, the branch director called him into his office, closed the door, and said one sentence. "Keep going. Not money." It was the market saying, "You are right." That was what Tariq would spend the rest of his career trying to find again. The evening, Tariq came home late after submitting the proposal. Layla placed dinner on the table, looked at him for a moment, then asked, "Who were you with tonight?" Tariq said he had stayed at the office. Layla did not ask further, but she also did not sit down to eat with him. Gold was at $2,100 that month. The chart showed a pattern Tariq had seen 3 times in 6 years. Every time that pattern appeared, gold reversed. The short position opened in under 5 minutes. 6 years of experience used to confirm a decision already made before the chart was opened. The screen was still on. The order was in. That pattern had been right 3 times before. This time it was not. Gold stood still for 3 weeks after hitting $2,100, then suddenly jumped to $2,200. The market did not reverse the way he had seen it do for 6 years. Tariq did not close the position. He manually disabled all the automatic safety margin alert systems on his work computer. He told himself this was just a short-term technical correction wave. Gold continued climbing to $2,500. The losses on the screen began showing 6-figure numbers. Instead of cutting losses, Tariq added more short orders. He believed the new positions at higher price levels would help him recover everything when the market collapsed. One afternoon at the Ahmedabad office, the pressure was so heavy that he had already typed a buyback order to accept the loss and end the days of tension. His finger paused, resting lightly on the confirm button, but the image of the undefeated department head of 6 consecutive years appeared in his mind. He deleted the order. He turned back to look at the screen with his stubbornness intact. That very evening, while watching his personal position get wiped down another $30,000, his phone lit up. His mistress sent a photo of a designer handbag she had been looking at since last week. Tariq hit transfer within 2 minutes, without a single thought. That was the fastest decision he had made all week. Gold went to $3,000. The leverage level had now been pushed up to the ceiling of 20 times capital. The branch director called Tariq into his office, closed the door. But this time he did not say the words, "Keep going." He only looked at Tariq's hollow face and asked one single question. "Are you sure?" Tariq did not blink. "I am sure." When he came home at midnight, Layla had not prepared dinner. She had placed on the table a printed bank statement of their joint account over the past 3 months, where their savings had been quietly drained by him to fund the margin account. She said not a word, only looked at Tariq for exactly 1 second, then walked into the bedroom and closed the door firmly. Tariq picked up the paper, looked at it in the darkness, then put it down. He did not knock on the door to explain. He opened his laptop, booked a one-way flight to Dubai, quietly packed his bags that same night, and brought his mistress with him to another land. At the Dubai hotel, Tariq used the last remaining collateral to add more short orders as gold continued to rise. $4,000, $4,500, then $5,000. Each milestone that passed burned another portion of his assets. Calls from the bank in Ahmedabad began coming continuously. They were no longer calling to ask about his strategy. They were calling to inform him that his collateral had been exhausted. Tariq looked at the screen at 11 that night, while his mistress was still fast asleep inside the hotel room. For the first time in his life, he understood that he could be right about every theory, right about every model from the past 6 years, and still lose. The market had never cared whether he was right or wrong. It only cared whether he still had money to maintain his position. At 3:40 in the morning, all positions were closed. $600,000. Not a single cent remaining. Tariq did not sleep. He sat until dawn. Did nothing. Just sat. When light began filtering through the curtains, his mistress woke up, pulled the curtains open, looked out at Dubai in the morning and said, "Today the weather is so beautiful." Tariq looked at her. She did not know anything, did not need to know anything. Her world was still running normally. His world had stopped at 3:40 in the morning. She asked where they were having breakfast. Tariq looked at his wallet. He knew which cards still worked. He knew which cards had been blocked. He chose the remaining card. They went down to the hotel restaurant. She ordered without looking at the prices. He looked at the menu without reading it. When the waiter asked what he would have, he ordered coffee. Just coffee. For the first time in his life, he sat in a restaurant, calculating whether he had enough money to pay for the meal. His mistress went to the bathroom. Tariq looked at his screen. A message from Layla. Not a question, not a reproach. Just one line. "Honey, I just signed the contract to sell the penthouse. I am keeping the money. Enjoy yourself in Dubai." Tariq read that message twice, then placed his phone face down on the table. His mistress came back, sat down, and asked if he wanted to go shopping in the afternoon. Tariq looked at her, then looked at the coffee cup in front of him, then looked outside. Nobody in that restaurant knew the man sitting drinking coffee had just lost everything. He looked like anyone else. That was the most frightening part. In early 2026, I met Tariq again at Dubai International Airport. He was no longer doing investment consulting or managing multi-million-dollar derivatives portfolios. He was no longer wearing the expensive suit that once commanded respect in Ahmedabad's financial circles. Instead, he wore a faded logistics staff uniform, handling the management and movement of cargo in the departure hall. I walked through the rushing crowd and stopped in front of his desk piled with paperwork. Tariq did not look up, but when he saw my shadow fall across the stack of cargo documents, the air around him seemed to thicken. "You once thought you could control the market," I said, my voice calm but sharp. "But it turned out the only thing you could not control was the illusion you had of yourself." Tariq put down his pen and looked up at me. The light from the flight departure board cast itself across a face already deeply lined by time and exhaustion. It was time for him to face the 3 questions I had brought, the things he had been running from since the day he lost everything. "The first question," I began. "You once stood at the top, But why was it only when you lost everything that you felt you could breathe for the first time? Tariq looked into the space behind me, where planes were taking off and leaving Dubai behind.
Because when I had money, I lived for numbers. When I had nothing left, I finally began to see the world that was actually around me.
The second question? You were right about every forecasting model, but you were wrong about the nature of the market. Have you understood that yet? Tariq gripped the cargo documents tightly. His hands had grown rough and calloused from the physical work.
The market does not operate according to human logic. It operates on fear and greed. I was too arrogant thinking I could teach it a lesson, when it was the market itself that taught me about the smallness of one individual.
The final question? I lowered my voice. If you could go back to the moment your finger paused on the confirm button, would you delete the order? Tariq was silent for a long time. He looked straight into my eyes, his voice catching.
I would not delete the order because I was afraid of losing money. I would delete it because I had already lost myself long before that liquidation order was ever executed.
I nodded. I left no words of comfort. I turned and walked into the crowded flow of people, leaving Tariq to return to his cargo inventory. The numbers on those pages no longer carried the pain of financial loss. They were just orders, shipments, and an ordinary life beginning again from the pieces. I left the airport terminal, leaving Tariq behind with his cargo manifests. Outside, the market boards were still blinking their endless red and green numbers. Gold was still being traded. It had come down from 5,500. Not because anyone was right, but because markets move. They do not move for anyone in particular. They do not stop to read anyone's analysis. Every ambition and every collapse of people like Tariq is just a small grain of dust on this endless chart. The market does not care who you are. It just keeps running. Are you still trying to prove something to a market that stopped recognizing your presence long ago? If you have seen yourself in the wreckage of Tariq, press and hold the like button, the way you hold on to what remains after a liquidation. Share this episode with someone who still believes they can bend the market to their will. Subscribe so you do not miss the next hard truth. And leave a comment about the moment you realized you were no longer in control of the game. I am Maya, the host of Wealth Paradox Global.